One of the enduring legacies of the 1960s is the music that comes from the era. And there are all kinds of different music. You've got, of course, the Beatles that we talked about earlier with the British invasion. You've got things like the Beach Boys in the mid 1960s, the Motown sound coming out of Detroit. Continuation of rock and roll, just a lot of different things that are happening at this point in time. But one of the interesting things in the 1960s, a style of music um, resurfaces called folk music. Probably today, if you were to listen to it, it's something along the lines of older country music, all acoustic, at least in the beginning, and it becomes popular again in part because it's the role it plays in anti-war protest. So, I want to just show you a couple things. This is going to be one that's short. I'm going to drop the videos behind it just to give you a sample of some of the big groups um, that you would see. Um, but just look for those as the playlist goes on. You had very simple instruments. A lot of times it was just acoustic guitars that people were playing. Woody Guthrie and Pete Seeger are two of the names that you hear pretty well associated with this, and a lot of it was happening in Greenwich Village in New York, and so. Like I said, these musical arrangements were um, very simple, but the messages, it was kind of like singing poetry. There was always a lot behind the lyrics that these guys were singing. Uh, one of the uh, one of the ones Woody Guthrie's famous for is "This Land Is Our Land." Probably a song I'll drop on this playlist, and you'll be familiar with the song that was there in the 1960s, and he's in kind of that time period of the Great Depression. In the 1960s, it's going to be brought back, and kind of the poster child is this guy's name's Bob Dylan. Bob Dylan has the distinction of being our principal's favorite artist. When I taught with Mr. Rout, he was always spouting Bob Dylan quotes and telling the kids about Bob Dylan. But Bob Dylan is in the late 50s going to appear down south, having um, concerts and things for um, the Freedom Riders as it comes in, but like I said, it continues to become more associated with the anti-war movement. Bob Dylan's still around today, still performing concerts today. Sings and probably a better songwriter than he is actually a singer. But Blowing in the Wind, like a Rolling Stone. There are several songs that he makes very popular. I'll drop a couple of those on the playlist for you. It ends up in the 1960s with kind of this high watermark of Woodstock. Woodstock's a music festival. I've heard it said that if everybody who claims to have been at Woodstock was there, it would have been the largest gathering of human beings in history. But Woodstock's 3 days in August of 1969. It's supposed to be a concert. Um, Originally, you needed tickets, but people kept coming, and so they just kind of threw the barriers open in Woodstock, New York, and let people come in. But some of the biggest artists of the day are going to be playing there. Interestingly, not Bob Dylan. He'd been in a bad auto accident before and was in the hospital. But Jimi Hendrix is there, Joe Cocker, just a lot of different types of artists, and a lot of it was folk music. So I'll throw some Woodstock stuff up there for you too. One other little story with Bob Dylan. I told you it was mostly acoustic uh, music that was being played at the Newport Jazz Festival in like 1965. He goes to the jazz festival and uses an amp and an electric guitar. Comes out on stage, starts to sing, and he gets booed off the stage because people are so anti using those electric instruments. He has to go back and borrow a guitar and come back out and finish his set. But once that happens, folk music will go into a little bit more of the amps and electric guitars and things like that. But like I said, kind of culminating with Woodstock. One of the interesting things to look at when you look at the 1960s is the era and the music is there. So if you're a music fan, I encourage you to dig into that a little bit more.